I'm going to let everyone know we have an incredible guest speaker, Richard, coming from his correspondent in Florida, our California gardener in Florida, talking about his exciting new experiences with Florida soil. And so take it away, Richard.
Thank you, Jen. So just to reiterate for those who may have just joined us, I was involved and actively involved with the Santa Clara Teaching Garden for 27 years. 5 months ago, I moved from Santa Clara to the city of Ocala, Florida. I'm not in a quote unquote city, I'm in the country, in a gated private community. And so I'm restarting gardening out here. And so I'm at the point now where I'm planting trees, fruit trees. And what I want to do in this video is hit some highlights of the growing conditions here, both temperately and also physically with the actual physical soil, which is dramatically different than what you have in Santa Clara. So let me start by saying that our temperature here is warmer than it is in Santa Clara. So we currently have, well, let me take a look at the actual thermometer in my room here. Okay, so now you're looking at hopefully what I'm looking at. So this is my indoor-outdoor thermometer, and right now it's showing 75 degrees outside. So it's 12:05 p.m. and it's 75 degrees outside. And inside my house, it's 72. So that's 72 with the windows open and a couple of fans running. So I'm not using air conditioning at this point. So let's extend that to what we have here in California in terms of the climate. Let me go back to the camera setting so I can reverse myself. Okay, so here in Ocala, Florida, which just FYI, most people don't know where Ocala is. I didn't know where it was until I started looking for real estate here. Ocala is 80 miles due north of Orlando. Orlando is pretty much the center point of the state. So it's the center north to south and it's the center east to west. I specifically moved into the center of the state so that I could avoid hurricanes. We get the after effects of hurricanes, which are generally storms, winds, but we don't get hurricanes here in Ocala. The claim to fame of the city of Ocala is that it's the world headquarters of horse breeding and horse training, believe it or not. Most people think that's Kentucky, but in fact, Kentucky Derby horses overwinter in Ocala. And I found out that's the case because the grass here has, the soil here has the same mineral content as it does in rural Kentucky. So when the horses come to Ocala for overwintering, not only is it warmer, which the horses like, but their feed has the same mineral and vitamin content as it had in Kentucky. So there's no difficulty in the transition, and the horses stay very, very healthy as a result. If you travel outside of the central area of Ocala, the only thing you will see left, right, and center are horse farms. It's just horse farms as far as the eye can see. And there are, I think, in the area of around 500 horse farms in the Ocala area. My church neighbor is a horse farm. And when I say horse farms, I don't mean the big, heavy Clydesdale working horses. These are thoroughbreds that are bred for racing. So you can see racing tracks on these horse farms where they train the horses on a daily basis. It's beautiful to watch. So that's just an FYI. The temperature, or I should say the climate here, is in some ways the same as it is in Santa Clara. In some ways it's dramatically different. So let's talk about the similarities. I am living in the 9A growing zone. So 9A is the same growing zone as Santa Clara, okay? It's subtropical. 70 miles to 80 miles south of me is the delimiting line that separates 9A from 9B. 9B is tropical. So in 9B, they can grow pineapples, bananas, you name it. They can grow it all. They can grow the same thing as Central America would grow. And that's about 70 to 80 miles south of me. So once you cross that demarcation line, which is just a few miles south of Orlando, you have a different weather pattern. You have warmer, hotter temperatures. So if you go to Miami, it can be easily 10 degrees warmer than it is here in Ocala because they're in a different temperate zone than we are. Okay, so that's just an FYI. Now let's talk about sun and rain. Atmospherically, we get a similar amount of sun that Santa Clara gets. So it's, when I go out on a daily basis, it really reminds me of Santa Clara. Days are nice and blue usually. Sky is blue. There's rolling clouds every once in a while. What we do get here that Santa Clara doesn't get very often, except in the winter, are the big puffy rain clouds. So we'll get more of those. However, like Santa Clara, we have rain that's concentrated into a very limited period of time during the year. So as you know, in Santa Clara, that's usually on a good year, late November, December, January, February, rain tapers off in March. So that's kind of the rainy season in Santa Clara. Here, we have a rainy season that begins in late November and extends into early March. That's about 4.5 months, okay? We don't call that the rainy season. It's officially known as the monsoon season. So let's put that into perspective. Santa Clara typically gets around 14 inches of rain per year, 14.5. I think in the 31 years that I lived in Santa Clara, I think the most rain we got was in the early 90s. It was the year where we got just under 20 inches of rain. That was a lot. Lexington Reservoir was under threat of overflowing at that point, to give you an idea as to how much water there was. But typically around 14-ish is more normal for Santa Clara. Here, we get 52 inches of rain per year. So that's 3.5 times as much, but in the same time duration as as Santa Clara gets its 14 inches. So we'll get 52 in that time frame. That's kind of the rainfall totals that you would expect in Boulder Creek and Ben Lomond. And that's what we're getting here. I mentioned monsoons are the terminology that's used here for the rainy season. And that's because the rains don't come down like they do in Santa Clara on these nice, light, delicate falls. They come here hard and heavy. And I experienced a couple of those rainfalls after I moved in last September. And it's amazing. You're almost scared during some of those rainfalls because the sky will be black. And we're talking middle of the day. Sky will be black because the clouds are so dark and so thick. And the rain could come down and just pound hard consistently for hours. It's amazing. I've never seen anything quite like it. And so they classify that type of rainfall as monsoon rather than normal rainfall. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is to bring you outside and show you the exterior here, the environment, if you will, and talk about the soil types. Jan, did you send out the slide, which is like the description of the different soil textures?
I actually, I'm going to talk about that later. So why don't you just, sand is so big and clay is so tiny, and I will be showing that right after you hang up.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you outside now and show you the environment. We're going to go directly to the soil, and I'm going to scoop out some of the topsoil here so that you can see and understand what I'm dealing with. Okay, so let me just reverse the camera. Oops. Okay, good. So now I'm exiting my what they call lanai out here. It's kind of the sunroom. Going outside. So now you can see kind of a kaleidoscope of what my backyard looks like. And what you'll see in the background is that there's a big, huge open field that's right on the edge of my immediate property. And that field is it's very unique because it's known as a water retention zone. Here in the state of Florida, we have a state mandate that necessitates water retention zones in every community, and not just one per community, but multiples in community per community. I don't know what the formula is in terms of how far they have to be apart, but they're everywhere. You can see them when you're driving down the roads. You can see them as you're driving through communities. These water retention zones are depressed compared to the level of the soil in my yard. So the water retention zone is probably about 8 feet deeper than the surface of my property. And so when it rains, water collects in the water retention zone, and it allows the water to seep back into the water table. And that's critical because the bedrock underneath the soil in Florida as a state as a whole is limestone. It's porous limestone. The water table is very close to the surface of the ground. As you can imagine, since the state is surrounded by water on 3 sides and is also low lying, there's no mountains in Florida, it's all low lying. So my property is 80 feet above sea level here, and I'm about 70 miles from the ocean. So the water collects in these water retention zones, seeps back into the soil, and it fills the porous layers of limestone. So if you could visualize the concept of limestone having these large caves inside it, so that's in the bedrock, the caves are filled with water, and then the water gets taken out for the municipal water usage. So it has to be replenished, and these water retention zones replenish the water back into the limestone caves. If we didn't have water retention zones, we would have a higher incidence of sinkholes. And you've probably heard and read about sinkholes in Florida. It's kind of famous for them. So what the water does when it seeps into the caves in the limestone bedrock, it fills the low pressure zones. Now, you would have low pressure zone if there's no water in the cave. So the water fills up the caves, it becomes a higher pressure zone. So it maintains an equilibrium to prevent sinkholes from occurring. So that's what that's all about. Just thought I'd show that to you. You might be able to also see, I don't know if you can tell on the video here, I have a lot of glare, so I can't see it properly. But my place also borders one of the golf courses that we have here in the community. And so people around here, unfortunately, I can't see them right now, but well, maybe you can see them in the distance. People around here generally commute, I should say, with their golf carts. So they move about in their golf carts to visit other people, to go to the store to buy groceries and stuff like that. And golf carts have to be electric here. So motorized, or I should say combustion engine golf carts are not allowed, which is kind of unique. And so you see golf carts bombing around all over the place. And that's just a characteristic of what we're dealing with here. Now, I have planted 3 trees here in the last month or so. And so they'll look familiar. This one here is a loquat. The one beside it is a fig. So you're looking at the fig tree here, and it's just starting to bud. And a couple of days ago, I also planted a peach tree. With flowering. To have chill hours. Our chill hours here average around 400-ish. So this tree, I should say, needs about 300 chill hours. So with 300 requirement and 400 actual, I'm going to get good fruit. I should expect to get good fruit off this tree. So I purchased it specifically for that reason. The chill hours in Santa Clara are roughly the same as they are here. Santa Clara gets around 400 chill hours per year. It used to be higher, but now it's around 400. And I say that with some degree of caution because, as you know, microclimates are the rule in the Bay Area. So Santa Clara may get 400, but just a little further south, they can get as high as 1,000 chill hours in parts of San Jose. So it really varies a lot. On the ground here, you'll see the mulch that is the most common in this area, and that's pine bark. So the big trees around here are oak and pine. They're very, very common. They're everywhere. Commercially, they take pine bark and they shred it into what they call nuggets, which is what you're seeing as my mulch here. And the nuggets then provide you the mulch to retain water in the soil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to the next spot where I'm going to be growing a new tree. I'm going to be buying a Mineola tangerine here, probably later on today. And I'm going to put it into this spot here. So I'm going to pull away some mulch so you can see what the soil is like. There we go. There's a water line you can see right there, plastic water line. Okay. So there's a soil surface. And one thing you can probably see as well is that roots tend to be very shallow around here. So I don't know if you can see it well on the screen, but there's a lot of surface roots right here that have to be moved away. So I'm just going to clip a few of them here to do that. And yeah, there we go. By clipping these roots, it's going to allow me to quickly expose more of the soil surface and show it to you. So here's the soil that I'm dealing with here. As you know, in Santa Clara, you have clay-based soil. So in order to prepare the soil for planting, you have to literally bust through the soil, unless you're planting in the winter and the rain has softened the soil. But if you were to start a garden in the spring or the summer when the soil is dry, you have to get a pickaxe. And some of you may have used the pickaxe that I donated to the garden before I moved out here. The soil, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this, is hard as a rock because it's clay dominated. So you have to amend the clay by using compost, a lot of compost. And once you do that, you actually have extremely rich soil because the combination of small amounts of clay and a humus-rich compost is fantastic because the clay adds a lot of minerality to the soil, which plants, especially fruit trees, love and need. So that's beautifully fertile ground, but it comes at a price. You have to make it fertile. So here we have the opposite scenario. We don't have clay per se here. What we have is sandy soil. In fact, not only sandy, but I'm talking pure sand. This is like beach sand here. So what I'm going to do is to take a plastic scoop, kind you'd use in your kitchen for, maybe measuring flour, and just put it into the soil here. And you can see how easily I'm scooping the soil. And if you look at the soil composition, that's beach sand. That's the exact sand that as a kid, perhaps, when you went to the beach, you were building sand castles. This is what sand you were using. So you could scoop this out. You could scoop out a hole for a 15-gallon tree container. And those of you who buy trees at the nurseries will know a 15-gallon is a big-ass tree container. You could scoop out the soil necessary to plant a 15-galloner in 15 minutes easily. To do that in Santa Clara with a pickaxe, I've done it many times because I planted 27 trees in my yard. It would take about 45 minutes and you would be sweating after you're done because you're busting clay and hard rocky clay. Whereas here, you could literally, if you wanted to, not even have to use a scoop. You could just use your hand. And with your hand, you can scoop the hole you need. That shows you how loose the soil is here. When the soil is composed primarily of sand, you can grow whatever you want in it. But as you can imagine, in sandy soil, you're going to have very poor water retention. That is because sand is so grainy, water doesn't stay in the sand, it flows through the sand. That means that you have to do a lot of watering, and water is precious. So you want to try and mitigate that situation by amending the soil. To grow a plant, you need to amend the soil anyways, because plants generally don't grow well in pure sand. There's just not enough nutrients in sand. So what we have to do is to take this soil here and put some compost into the soil. So we're going to have a balance, a mix of well-draining soil, well-draining sand, if you will, and nutrition-rich compost. And that's going to give our plants a great start. So the compost that I'm using is this stuff. Let me get it in the camera here. It's called Cowabunga. It's compost plus cow manure. Okay. So that's what they sell at the local Lowe's. By the way, Lowe's has a bigger presence here in Central Florida than Home Depot does. I have a Lowe's right on the outside of the community where I live, whereas Home Depot is about 7 miles away. So Lowe's is where we shop. If we look at the composition of this compost, I don't know if you can see that, it's 90% forest products, which is going to be, forest tree scraps from cutting down trees, and 10% cow manure. I specifically chose this blend because it has the nutrients of cow manure, but cow manure is not predominant. I'm not a big fan of buying the bags you can get at Home Depot of cow manure, largely because commercial cows are in salt licks. Salt is containing, means that when the cows lick the salt, they drink water, they retain a lot of water. And when they're brought to auction, they have gained a lot of weight through water retention. So the farmers, there's more money for their cow that way. So salt lick is a very low cost way of beefing up your beef, so to speak. But salt is not good for soil. So I'm not a big fan of cow manure, pure cow manure, because of the high salt content. But at 10%, we get enough nutrients from this that I think it's worth it. And we're going to amend the soil, not through cow manure, but through the composted forest products. So I'm going to mix about a 50-50 blend of the compost with the sand. One of the very experienced gardeners that I'm dealing with here locally that I've met recently suggested 25%, but I'm going to go richer, 50% compost to 50% sand versus 25 compost to 75 sand. And I believe that combination is going to work out really well. So I'm not going to dig the hole in its entirety here. What I want to do in this video is to just show you the composition of the soil that we have here, and that it's pure sand, nothing else in it but sand, which is kind of unique. And then after this video, Jan is going to go over with you a chart showing the characteristics of soil types, and sand is one of the soil types. So you'll be able to equate or relate to that chart. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you for today. I'm hopefully going to be doing videos in the future in which I'm going to be talking about other aspects of the unique gardening culture here. So back to you, Jan.